This is Albert Michon here, discussing the topic of prayer and different approaches to prayer, but specifically today we'll deal with one approach to prayer that maybe not everyone is so familiar with. So, probably throughout high school or throughout college even, prayer has probably been something to you that good some days, bad some days. If you're the type of person that prays every day, maybe if you're a person that doesn't pray every day, something you do once in a while, maybe you feel something, maybe you don't. And I'm sure everyone at some point or another has had the feeling of, why am I not feeling something? Am I doing it wrong? Should I feel bad about myself that I don't feel anything? Maybe, I'm not the person that can feel something, so maybe I shouldn't pray. And I'm sure some of those people have had those feelings. Probably all of us have maybe at one point spoken to a rabbi about it, and maybe got a specific answer like, did you try, learning about what you're saying? Maybe try using the English translation. Maybe try coming to shul early and thinking about what you want to say beforehand. Maybe even try moving a little bit when you pray. Maybe all different kinds of ideas aimed at trying to get us to feel something when we pray. And I'm sure, and that's all legitimate, and that works for some people. And I'm just going to try and introduce people to a different approach that's interesting because probably none of us have ever even heard a rabbi tell us about it. This is the approach of Yeshayahu Leibowitz, who was an Israeli philosopher. He was pretty controversial for a variety of reasons. He spoke about things to do with Judaism and the state, Judaism and prayer, what it means to be Jewish, what it means to pray, what is Israel as a Jewish state, all different types of topics. So he's controversial, but he has also a pretty interesting thing to say about prayer. So I'm going to begin introducing his concept of prayer by asking a question, which is, why do a rich Jew and a poor Jew and a happy Jew and a sad Jew say the same Amidah? Why is it that a father that just had a son and somebody that just lost their parent and somebody that just gets married, they're all saying the same thing? And you would think that wouldn't make sense because these people are at such different times in their lives, they're in such different states. How can it be that you're going to have them say the same thing and both feel something? Maybe one of them will feel something, but definitely not the guy that lost his father, or it's got to be one or the other. It can't be both. And the other thing you might ask is, well, if prayer is meant, if I'm supposed to feel something, then why are we saying these words, that first of all I don't understand, maybe. Second of all, that maybe don't connect with me. Maybe it would be much better if I could make my own beracha about how I want to pass my road test, or how I want to do well in college, or how I want to get married, or what have you. Why not that? I'm sure everybody would have a much better time praying. We'd all feel much better. We'd all feel like we got much more out of it. And then, you might take a look at what you're saying, and you might say, well, this doesn't apply to me, and that doesn't apply to me, and why am I praying for Bnei Israel, or why is the voice in the plural, like, this is about me, right? That's sort of what we've grown up around, which is, I have to pray, I have to do this. Why am I not feeling anything? Rabbi's telling you maybe you should try to. Everything sort of, and why wouldn't it be? What else would prayer be for? Is prayer for God? God doesn't need anything, right? God's God. He doesn't need your prayers to sustain himself. So Yeshayahu Leibowitz, addresses this with something that's pretty simple, but I think pretty radical. He says that prayer is not for you at all. It's not for you. The Amidah that you say 3 times a day is not meant for you at all. That's why everyone says it, because it's meant to be your demonstration of Ol Malchut Shamayim, which is accepting God's authority over you, just like everything else in halakha. That's his basic philosophy of halakha, is that halakha is what Jews do. And the only reason Judaism survived is because we had a continuity of people doing the same thing. And prayer is one of the ways you express that you're Jewish. For him, I guess, a Jew that doesn't pray isn't really so Jewish. And that makes sense, to me at least a little bit. When you think about how, you on Yom Kippur, you spend the whole day asking for forgiveness, praying for forgiveness, you're so emotional, you're so into it, you really feel like you're going to make a change. And then, Ne'ilah and the shofar goes up, and, it's beautiful and it's emotional, and you feel like you actually got something out of your prayer, and then you say regular arbit, and you start off the regular arbit after Yom Kippur with a prayer that asks God for forgiveness, as if you didn't spend the whole day just doing that. So I think that jives with that feeling of it doesn't connect to me, because it's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about the people, and it's supposed to be about acknowledging that you're just a link in the chain. You're not an I. You're part of a we. You're part of a collective, and this is what Jews have always done, and that's what they're going to continue to do. So the way I've had rabbis describe it to me, and I've tried this approach to varying degrees of success, is I pray, and I don't think of myself. I don't ask God for anything. I don't have a dialogue with God. I don't use that time, as like God's not my therapist during that time. I'm not sitting on his couch, because that's not what it's about. It's not about me. It's about accepting God's authority on me, which might lead you to ask, well, that might be all well and good, but that's a little bit cold. You don't really, even if you wanted a relationship with God, how could you have one if you're never going to ask for anything? You're just going to do it and leave. It seems like you don't really mean anything. There's no passion. There's something missing. I'm sure people would agree. And that's sort of the point, which is that prayer isn't supposed to be something you're passionate in. So it's supposed to be your time to make a connection with God. But the beautiful thing is that once prayer becomes something to you that is about the collective, is about Bnei Israel, is about acknowledging God's centrality in your life, then you begin to connect to God in other ways, and in very personal ways, because you're not using that personal time with God on a time where it's not meant for, so you don't feel anything. So, for instance, you go pray mincha, and then you want to feel a connection with God. Go meditate. Maybe go read. Think about Him. Ask, talk. You can still talk. You can still have a much more personal experience, just as long as you're not using the time that's designated for God's Ol Malchut Shamayim and the idea of the collective being a part of the Jewish chain of existence, and that prayer. You use a different time to have that personal relationship. So it seems to me an approach that leads to a little bit more balance, where you're not trying to cram personal feelings and supplications to God in a box. You're not trying to fit like a round peg in a square box. You're not trying to fit your personal feelings in the national collective, praying for Jerusalem to be rebuilt, and then you have to, oh, by the way, I need help on my math test. Doesn't really seem to work. So that's one thought about prayer. The other thought about prayer that I had was, praying for specific things. Now, I don't pretend to know how, the system works up there in Shamayim, and how, if you pray to do well on your math test, does God zap you and, you're going to do well now? Maybe. Far be it from me to know. But I would like to just convey an idea about prayer. That prayer is not, God's not like a vending machine. It's not like you put a prayer in, you get what you want out. And I think it's a problem for some people when they expect that, because when it doesn't happen, it can really shake you. Or when you see, somebody close to you go through, a sickness, and you pray, and nothing happens, it sort of shakes you a little bit. I believe, this is my personal belief, is that when you pray to God that this natural system of shachar va'onesh and the natural system that He set up for this world to run should be fulfilled. That meant, people say, well, why did this person get sick? Maybe they got sick because of the choices they made, and maybe they can be healed so long as the medical system does its job, or so long as their body fulfills God's instructions of white blood cells attacking a cancer or something like that. So you pray to God that should work. You pray to God in general that God should do what is most beneficial for that person if that's in the plan. And maybe even pray for the person to get better, because you think that prayer will change me enough and make me such a better person that now God will maybe listen to what I have to say. Maybe even that. I don't know if I believe that, but maybe even that. But it's a problem when people think that they're going to pray and then that's what's going to happen. And now, taken further, the whole idea of wearing a red string, of making keys into chali, all those things, will definitely have their place, and I'm sure their sources, but I think in this specific approach, not to say that these things are completely wrong, but just in this specific approach wouldn't really fit in as much, because in this approach it's less about trying to see, maybe if I wear a red string, I have a segula that God will take care of me. It's more about your relationship with God. It's not like you're trying to trick God into doing things. It's more about your relationship with God, really connecting with God and trusting in God's system and His plan for the universe and for your life, because He's God. He does a pretty good job at it.